So what is a proof? A proof is just basically if you were walking somebody through a problem, explaining to them, well, we know this because of that. You can talk it through really easily often. Okay, I know talking math isn't always easy, but usually verbally, just communicating with somebody, this is why we do what we do here. You can explain it in words. Well, proofs are just taking those words and putting them down as statements and then giving reasons of why those words that you're saying are true and factual. That's all a proof is. So what we start with is our given. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. I'm going to state that right now. I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Now, how do I know that? What's my reasoning for being able to make this claim? Well, I was told this. This was given to me. So all I have to write for my reason is given. So you're typically going to start with your given piece of information. Since we were given this knowledge, we don't look at those and know that for a fact. Nothing tells me that these lines are parallel. I can't confirm that 1 and 2 are the same unless someone tells me they're the same. So since this was given to us, we write it down. Our reason is we were told. Okay, now the reason we were told this is because if these two angles are the same, we can determine something about these two angles that helps us to confirm angle 1 and 3 are also the same. So what do we know about these two angles here? So we're given this information. We don't need to know that in order to know something about 2 and 3. If I make two lines intersecting like this angle here and this angle here are what we call vertical angles. This angle will always be congruent to its vertical angle, just like this angle will always be congruent to its vertical angle, the opposite angle across from it. So since we know that, that is a piece of math that we learned way back in probably 7th or 8th grade, we can confirm that those two angles, 2 and 3, angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. Why? How do I know that? Because vertical angles are congruent. This is something we were taught back in the day. Vertical angles are congruent. So, what are we looking at? Vertical angles. 2 and 3, they got to be congruent. That's why. This is the statement. Now, if 2 and 3 are congruent, and 1 and 2 are congruent, the transitive property says A equals B. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. This is the transitive property. If A is equal to B, well, A is the same thing as B. So B equals C, well, B is the same thing as A. So I can put an A right there. A would equal C. That's the transitive property. So why is that useful? Because that's what's going to tell us that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So now our last and final statement, we need to prove angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Why? Because of what we proved up here, we can now say angle 1 is the same as angle 2. Well, angle 2 is the same thing as angle 1, so we could replace that with an angle 1, showing that angle 1 is equal to angle 3. How? Transitive property. So again, we are given something, we use some background knowledge we already own and have, and then that allows us to make a statement or a claim that we know to be true. So we have now proven that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, because if angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, which was given to us, 2 has to be congruent to angle 3 because they're vertical angles. And if these two are equal, I could just say, well, if angle 2 is the same as angle 1, I could just change angle 2 to angle 1. And meaning it's going to also be congruent to angle 3. Hopefully this makes sense. You're just breaking it down in two columns, statements and reasons as to why it's true. Give the statement, something you need to know in order to get to the final result. What's your reasoning for each individual statement you're making? That is a proof. Hopefully this makes sense. Study.